but share with us your breast cancer diagnosis, right? Which had spread to your lungs and bones, if I'm not incorrect, at the age of 47. And
Yeah.
how it changed your life, but those words, you have stage 4 breast cancer. There's listeners that can definitely relate. Share us with how you felt.
Well, it started with I was 4th of July at the beach with my family and my favorite aunt. And of course, I had a bikini top on, and I was leaning over, and she said, Ruthie, what's that lump in your breast? And I looked down, and it was, oh my gosh, it was like it had popped up overnight. I couldn't believe it. And so I immediately made an appointment to go see a doctor. And he said, oh my God, why'd you wait so long to come in? And I said, I just found this. Plus, I've had mammograms every 6 months and they're all negative. So, anyway, he said, we're going to do a biopsy right now. And so he took me into the surgical suite and got me all ready. And I said, I want to watch this. And he said, oh, no, you don't. I said, yes, I do. I can't have cancer. I've been a runner for 14 years. I've run marathons. I'm so fit. There's no way it could be cancer. And I just want to see what that is. He said, are you sure? And I said, yes. And so when they were getting ready to prep me, the nurse started to put a screen. And I said, no, I'm going to watch. And she said, did your doctor say you could? And I said, yes. So he comes in and
Wow.
gets me ready, starts cutting and cuts and cuts and cuts, and takes out this whole lump, which is literally that big.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, he puts it on the table, takes a knife and scalpel and cuts it, and little grains of sand fall out. And he says, uh-oh. And I almost come up off the table. What do you mean, uh-oh? He said, oh, that's not a good sign, but we won't know. We're going to send a sample down to pathology and they'll take a look. In the meantime, I'm going to sew you back up and you get dressed. And when you're dressed, come back in. We'll have an answer by then. So I'm getting dressed and I'm, confident. There's no way I could have cancer. I'm 47. I'm fit, healthy. So I walk in and his office and the chair he's in is facing the window. And so as I just get to the doorway, I hear him say infiltrating ductal carcinoma. And I
Ugh.
knew what carcinoma meant. And I just almost fainted. I was speechless. I was stunned. And I somehow managed to sit down. And he said, yeah, I'm sorry to tell you that. And I didn't even get clear margins. So it's bigger than the 5 centimeters that we originally thought it was. It's a lot bigger than that. So we're going to schedule you for a mastectomy and then, of course, chemo and radiation afterwards. And so the next thing was to get a bunch of the tests, the scans, the bone scans, which were positive for bone. My liver enzymes were supposed to be in the 2 digits. They were in the 4 digits. And I found on the x-ray that they had a lump that was kind of ill-defined, and we're going to biopsy that. That's what started everything. Okay. And I went home and I told my husband what it was, and we both cried. It was just
Sure.
really, yeah,
So this shook you, no doubt. I can't write.
Yeah.
So many that have had that diagnosis and remember that moment and those words and how they felt. So for you, this was 1982.
Right.
And you were already a runner, right? Like you said, for 14 years and thought you were eating very healthy.
Let me tell you about Kenneth Cooper. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Okay. He is the founder of aerobics. He wrote the first book.
Oh, okay.
Let me see. Right. This book right here, Aerobics, Kenneth Cooper.
Okay.
He's the one who started this whole exercise movement in 1968.
Okay.
And yeah, that kicked off. And the word means many other things, but back then it meant exercising any of the major muscle groups and for health of the heart, the lungs, everything else. I read that book in 1968 and it made so much sense going through it. And I went for a run the next morning and I ran to the end of my street, turned a corner, another block, and ran back up. And when I finished, I thought, oh, I feel fantastic. Oh my gosh. So the next morning I did it again and again, and got to the point where I would get up at either 4, 5, or 6 in the morning, run before going to work. And so that was my usual routine. And after a while, like in 1970, somebody said to me, there's a race. I was working at Hickam Air Force Base at the time. I'm a retired Air Force logistics officer. That was my background. So he handed me this race flyer. And so I entered it. And that was my first race. And I got hooked on racing. So I had even been racing, but I hadn't. It was no medals or anything. It was just kind of for fun.
You were just staying fit and doing what the book said.
Yep.
Yes.
And so about 3 days after the breast cancer diagnosis, I had taken medical leave and was reading the local newspaper and came across this tiny little, I don't have it handy, I should have. It's a 4-line ad and it said diet and breast cancer research. And if you have had or have breast cancer and want to participate in this research, call, and it's Dr. John McDougall, and it's a Kailua number. And if you know Oahu and Hawaii at all, it's close by. And I thought, perfect. So I run to the phone and call. And his wife, Mary, he was just getting started back then. And the two of them had this small office. He had just finished his residency. And he'd been a plantation doctor on the Big Island. A plantation doctor takes care of all the employees. And there are a lot of immigrants and Japanese, Filipino, Chinese, Japanese. And what John McDougall saw at the time was a difference in the 3 generations. The oldest, they were healthy, never needed anything. The middle, not so much. And the children, fat, diabetic. And he knew diet was so important. And he thought that affects cancer as well. So when he finished his tour there, he came back to Kailua on Oahu. And that's when he decided that chemotherapy and radiation do not cure cancer. They don't even necessarily keep it from coming back. And I am positive because he looked at animal studies and epidemiological studies, population studies, and big differences in the rates of breast cancer. And he says, okay, I'm going to prove that it's diet and that can either prevent cancer, prevent recurrence, or treat it if you've got it. And so he explained all this to me. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I can always get the chemo radiation. He said, no, because when it works, they're going to say it was the chemo and radiation that did it. You cannot have, so you have to make a choice. No chemo, no radiation.
No hormone blockers, nothing, just completely clean.
Back then, they were really new. I mean, I think there was only one, and they were still doing a research on it, tamoxifen.
Okay,
had not really been approved, and so he showed me the data. At this point, I hadn't finished my PhD, but it was in psychology, and that was my way of wanting to help with psychological background counseling. And so he pulled out a file drawer and he says, "You're welcome to spend as much time as you want looking at the research that I base this on." And so he spent a full 2 hours with me. When was a doctor ever going to do that? And I even saw his wife, Mary, who told me about how to fix the food, no oils and whole foods, basically. 2 hours later, I walked out of there a vegan. And there was no looking back whatsoever. The only real problem was my husband. And now I say then husband because he totally rejected the idea that diet was the answer.
Oh,
And
wow.
would not. He said, I gave you credit for more intelligence than that.
Oh.
And, that just, and so he said, you've fallen into the hands of a quack. It's a cult. I mean, this went on for days and weeks, and so I said, I'm not buying any animal, no bacon, no eggs, no cheese. And so he started doing his own shopping and said, okay. And so you look in our refrigerator and one side is all my food. The other is all his food, lobster and butter. He wasn't going to give up anything. And so what I noticed was the symptoms. The bone pain went away within days. And the next blood test, he looked at my cholesterol levels from the blood work that I'd had. And he said, at the level of 236 total cholesterol, you are at as high a risk of dying of a heart attack as the breast cancer. And I said, wait just a minute. No, I run marathons. And he said, nope, you high cholesterol clogs the arteries and that gives you heart disease. But he said, don't worry. He said, when you change your diet, that change that went away. My next blood test was 17 days later, and my cholesterol had dropped to 129, 236 to 129.
Nice work.
He looked at that and he said, I can tell you didn't cheat. I said, cheat? Why would I cheat? And he said, you'd be surprised.
You're facing life and death.
Yeah, but other women face life and death, and they can either walk out and say that, like my then husband, it would be, or they try it for a little while and then they say, oh, I can't do this anymore. But so I was his first patient who I think really took to it and showed these fantastic results. And further, what I found out was my running was so much more efficient. Recovery was fast. I was running further, faster. And my next marathon, and I had run a bunch of marathons at that point. My next marathon.
9:45.
You got to get up and do some squats or something while you're on the podcast.
Yeah. No, I'll just, you can sit and do flex the quads and quads.
Okay, so, of course you can. Okay.
So anyway, my next marathon was Honolulu Marathon. Took 17 minutes off my last.
Oh, wow, that's huge.
That is huge. And further, it's right across from Waikiki Beach. And I went for a nice swim afterwards, whereas all the other competitors are just exhausted and want to sit or lie down, go to the massage tent, and were sore the next day. When they had the award ceremony, they could hardly walk. And here I totally recovered. And I thought, this is amazing. The difference the diet makes, not just in cancer, not just in heart disease, but in my sport of running.